In this tutorial, we're actually going to draw an object, a box, for our two-point perspective. Now, let's begin by looking at our layers. We have horizon points, guides, and boxes. The horizon points and guides are going to be used so that we have the objects that we want to draw with, and the box is going to be our first animated box. Let's begin by going to the line tool and making sure that we're on shape drawing mode. Now I'm going to go to the horizon points, draw a straight line that goes across my horizon, and move it down a little bit just to make sure it is in a place I want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and make it red as well, just so it's obvious that it's different than the other things. Now, the closer that we put our horizon points to the center of our drawing, then the more drastic our two-point perspective is going to be. So I'm going to move mine a little bit off to the sides, and all you have to do is draw a straight line that bisects the original line, and what this does is automatically cut into it because I have, of course, shape drawing here, shape drawing mode. Now I can remove the inside part, and what I'm left with on the outside is just the places where I want to connect my horizon points to. Since these are off the stage, I don't really have to worry about doing anything except maybe locking the layer. But it's not a bad idea to go ahead and press guide as well, because that way when I do make a Swift file of this, those layers will not be exported. And we're also going to do that with the guide layer. So we'll go ahead and make that a guide layer so that anytime we export our drawing, we won't be able to see those. Now that we have our horizon points drawn, we're going to draw our guides. Let's go back to the line tool, make sure that we're using red or another color so it's obvious, and this time I am going to use object drawing mode. What we want to do is draw lines that connect to the outer points of our horizon. So you can now see that we have our basic converging lines. Now we could draw more lines if needed. To adjust these lines, click off the line, then you can click on the end, and you can adjust them as needed. Now what we need is some basic vertical lines. So I'm going to zoom up just a little bit, go back to the line tool, and draw 3 vertical lines, and I'm not too worried about where they're placed yet, because we're going to modify that here in just a second. Anyway, we do want to kind of notice that a three-dimensional shape is starting to appear. So you can then click on your lines and click and drag them to move them where you want them to be precisely so that you can get the exact drawing that you want to appear when you're done. You can kind of see how the space is divided up. So I'm going to be drawing a box with a little bit smaller front than a side. The side would be pretty long. Now, what we need to do is we need to break apart some of the lines in order to get our first connections made. So in order to do this, I'm going to go ahead and take 3 of the lines and break them apart with Control B. You'll see that they made connections now. Now I can take this other line on the other side and click on it and snap it to the point where that intersection happens. You can see that if I do it up there, then I'm going to actually make my box a little bit smaller. So what I might want to do is move that out of the way, take this line here, whoops, take this line here and break it apart. I double-clicked accidentally. And that's giving me basically this one front here that I've got there. And I can even change those colors to a different color just so we can tell that I've got those lines already made. Now I can snap that point, hopefully, there we go, to that outer point, this point to that outer point. I can adjust where I want this to be for my side, and then I can go ahead and create those by doing Control B, breaking it apart. Now I can select the lines on the inside for my box. I can change the color of those, so we can now see that I have all the lines that I need for my box. So I'm going to go ahead and take that box, do Control X, go to the box layer, and paste that in place, paste in place, so that I've got that exactly where I want it to be. And now I might just lock it just to make sure that I can't change that. Now, what I'm going to do next is actually extend my lines out a little bit more. So let's get rid of lines I know I'm not going to need. I know I'm not going to need these lines on the outside here. It can be kind of a pain to select multiple lines, but that's just part of using Flash, of course. And now I'm going to move these lines out so they go along that line. And they actually will converge back to that center point. They're actually converging underneath this file. So if I turn off my box, you'll see that those have now converged. Now these will actually be useful because we can use these lines to help us animate. So I'm going to lock the guides, turn the box back on, and let's start to give some color to our sides. So we can pick some sort of color that we want to name to give things, maybe a purple or blue, I don't really know. But we do need to find a color to use. And then go ahead and fill that in on our sides. And then it's not a bad idea to select one side and make it a slightly different color. So of course we get to use that idea of cell shading. Now we can take the box, make it into a symbol. So this will be my box symbol, and I used the F8 method. And now I can animate along that line. In order to animate, let's go ahead and give me, I don't know, 50 frames. Looks like I could extend the whole thing out 50 frames without any problem. And I'm going to have this animate in 30 frames. So it'll kind of get there and stop, and then it'll loop again. So I'm going to actually have it end where it is. So I'm going to take the keyframe that's there and duplicate it to frame 30. That way I can go back to the beginning and then move this back to the beginning. Or move this to where I want it to be. So what I'm going to do is move it back and scale it down with holding down the free transform tool, or the Q key will get to me that tool. And what I want to do is get it so that when I scale this object, it actually fits pretty well along those lines. Because by following those lines and then right-clicking, choosing our create our motion tween, you'll see that we're animating along those lines. And that creates a much better animation than if we were not to do it that way. So why don't I extend the animation out to the right, and I'll do frame 50. It could be frame 60. It's going to animate the other direction. So now I'm going to take it over to the right, scale it down, zoom in, and then just make sure that these are somewhat fitting those lines. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but the closer that we put it, of course, the better that animation is going to look. So now I can right-click, choose Create Classic Tween, and you'll see now it looks like it's coming up and then going back the other direction. And so there's a really successful animation with two-point perspective. Go ahead and save your work, and when you save your work, remove the start file. If you like, add a few more boxes, play around with it a little bit more. But that's it. Thanks.